In the heart of London, where millions of tourists gather daily to witness the grandeur of British royalty, one man's split-second decision would transform him from an ordinary visitor into front-page news across the world. What started as a seemingly normal Tuesday morning at Buckingham Palace would soon erupt into chaos, testing the limits of royal security and revealing just how far the Queen's Guard will go to protect the crown. This is the true story of a criminal who thought he could outsmart centuries of British military tradition and the swift justice that followed his reckless gamble. The morning sun cast long shadows across the forecourt of Buckingham Palace as tourists began their daily pilgrimage to witness one of Britain's most enduring traditions. The changing of the guard ceremony drew thousands of visitors from every corner of the globe, their cameras ready to capture the iconic red tunics and towering bearskin hats that had become symbols of British heritage. Among the crowd stood Marcus Thompson, a 34-year-old man whose appearance betrayed nothing of the criminal intent brewing in his mind. Dressed in casual tourist attire with a backpack slung over his shoulder, he blended seamlessly with the international visitors who pressed against the palace gates. Thompson had arrived in London 3 days earlier, ostensibly for a vacation, but his true purpose was far more sinister. Thompson wasn't just any ordinary criminal. His record stretched back 15 years, filled with petty theft, assault charges, and a dangerous obsession with weapons that had landed him in prison twice before. Recently released from a 2-year sentence for armed robbery, he had spent months planning what he believed would be his most audacious crime yet. The idea had consumed him during his final weeks in prison, where he had researched royal protocols and studied footage of palace security procedures with the dedication of a military strategist. The Queen's Guard stood at their posts with the stoic dignity that had made them famous worldwide. These weren't mere ceremonial figures in elaborate costumes, as many tourists assumed. Each guard was a fully trained soldier from elite regiments of the British Army, their rifles loaded with live ammunition, their training honed through years of military service. The particular guard that would soon become the center of international attention was Guardsman James Mitchell, a 26-year-old veteran of 2 tours in Afghanistan whose service record was exemplary. As the morning progressed, Thompson positioned himself strategically near the palace railings, studying the guards' movements with predatory focus. He had noticed what he believed was a pattern in their routine, moments when their attention seemed divided between crowd control and their ceremonial duties. What Thompson failed to understand was that this apparent inattention was actually part of a sophisticated security protocol designed to create the illusion of vulnerability while maintaining constant vigilance. The crowd thickened as tour groups arrived, creating the perfect cover for Thompson's planned assault. Children pressed their faces against the railings. Parents snapped photos, and tour guides recited historical facts about the palace's 800-year history. The atmosphere was festive, almost carnival-like, with the excited chatter of visitors mixing with the clip-clop of horses from the nearby royal mews. Thompson's heart raced as he edged closer to his target. Guardsman Mitchell stood approximately 15 feet away, his SA-80 assault rifle held at the regulation angle, his eyes scanning the crowd with professional alertness. The weapon represented everything Thompson craved: power, respect, and the ultimate criminal trophy. In his twisted logic, successfully stealing a rifle from the Queen's Guard would elevate his status among criminal circles and provide him with a weapon worth tens of thousands of pounds on the black market. The moment Thompson had been waiting for arrived when a group of schoolchildren created a minor disturbance nearby, drawing the attention of several tourists and causing a small surge in the crowd. This was his chance. With the confidence of a man who had convinced himself he was cleverer than centuries of military tradition, Thompson made his move. He burst through the crowd with surprising speed, his eyes locked on the rifle in Guardsman Mitchell's hands. The tourists around him initially thought he was perhaps an overenthusiastic visitor trying to get a better photo, but the determined look in his eyes and the aggressive nature of his approach quickly revealed his true intentions. Shouts of alarm began to rise from the crowd as Thompson closed the distance to the unsuspecting guard. Guardsman Mitchell's training kicked in instantly. Years of military conditioning had prepared him for exactly this type of threat, and his reaction was both swift and precise. As Thompson's hands reached for the rifle, Mitchell's grip tightened, and he immediately began the defensive maneuvers drilled into every guard during their extensive training. The rifle, far from being the easy target Thompson had imagined, became the center of a struggle that would be captured on dozens of tourist cameras and mobile phones. The first few seconds of the confrontation unfolded with startling intensity. Thompson, driven by desperation and criminal ambition, pulled at the weapon with both hands, attempting to wrench it from Mitchell's grasp. The guard's superior training and physical conditioning immediately became apparent as he maintained control of his rifle while simultaneously calling for backup. The crowd erupted in screams and chaos as tourists scattered, some running for safety while others, inexplicably, began filming the unfolding drama. What Thompson had failed to anticipate was the immediate response from other guards stationed around the palace perimeter. Within seconds of the initial assault, armed police officers and additional guards converged on the scene with military precision. The carefully choreographed security protocols that had been invisible to casual observers now revealed themselves in full force, demonstrating why Buckingham Palace remained one of the most secure locations in the world. The struggle intensified as Thompson realized his grave miscalculation. The rifle wasn't just ceremonial, it was a fully functional military weapon, and Guardsman Mitchell had no intention of allowing it to fall into criminal hands. The guard's combat experience in Afghanistan had prepared him for far worse situations than this, and he methodically began to gain the upper hand in the physical confrontation. Thompson's initial surprise advantage evaporated as the professional soldier's training took control of the situation. The security response was swift and overwhelming, demonstrating the layers of protection that surrounded the British royal family at all times. Armed police officers arrived within 30 seconds of the initial assault, their weapons drawn and their training evident in every calculated movement. The crowd's initial shock gave way to panic as visitors realized they were witnessing a genuine security breach rather than some elaborate ceremonial display. Guardsman Mitchell maintained his composure throughout the struggle, his military training evident in how he protected both his weapon and the surrounding civilians. Even while fighting off Thompson's desperate attempts to steal his rifle, Mitchell positioned himself to shield nearby children from potential harm and continued to follow protocol by maintaining communication with his command structure through his radio system. Thompson's desperation grew with each passing second as he realized the impossibility of his situation. What had seemed like a clever plan during months of prison planning now revealed itself as the fantasy of a deluded criminal. The rifle remained firmly in professional hands, and he found himself surrounded by armed officers whose response capabilities far exceeded anything he had encountered in his previous criminal activities. The physical confrontation lasted less than 2 minutes, but those moments contained enough drama to fill hours of news coverage. Thompson's attempts to wrestle the rifle away became increasingly frantic as backup guards joined the fray, their coordinated response demonstrating years of training in dealing with exactly this type of threat. The Queen's Guard protocols, developed over centuries of protecting British royalty, proved their effectiveness against modern criminal attempts. Tourist videos captured every moment of the struggle, providing multiple angles of Thompson's failed assault and the professional response it triggered. These recordings would later become crucial evidence in his prosecution, but in the immediate aftermath, they served to document the professionalism and restraint shown by the guards and police officers involved. Despite the serious nature of the threat, no excessive force was used, and civilian safety remained the paramount concern throughout the incident. As additional security personnel arrived, the perimeter around the confrontation expanded rapidly. Tourists were moved back to safe distances, while specialized units took control of the immediate area. The response included not only palace guards and metropolitan police, but also anti-terrorism units, whose presence underscored the serious nature of any assault on royal security. Thompson found himself at the center of a security response designed to counter threats far more sophisticated than his amateur criminal attempt. The moment when Thompson finally lost control of his assault was captured dramatically on several tourist cameras. Overwhelmed by professional security personnel and facing the futility of his situation, his grip on the rifle weakened, and Guardsman Mitchell was able to fully secure his weapon. The expression on Thompson's face shifted from desperate determination to the dawning realization of his complete failure and the severe consequences that awaited him. The arrest process began immediately, with armed officers securing Thompson while maintaining constant vigilance for any potential accomplices or secondary threats. His hands were restrained with professional zip ties while officers conducted a thorough search for weapons or explosive devices. The security protocols required treating any assault on palace security as potentially part of a larger terrorist plot, regardless of Thompson's apparent amateur status. Emergency medical personnel arrived to assess both Thompson and Guardsman Mitchell for injuries sustained during the struggle. Despite the intensity of the confrontation, both men had avoided serious physical harm, testament to Mitchell's professional handling of the situation and the restraint shown by responding officers. Thompson's minor scrapes and bruises would heal, but the psychological impact of his failed crime would have lasting consequences. The crowd of tourists, initially panicked by the sudden violence, began to realize they had witnessed something historically significant. Many continued filming even as police established secure perimeters, creating a comprehensive video record of both the crime and the professional response it generated. These recordings would later be analyzed frame by frame during Thompson's prosecution, providing irrefutable evidence of his criminal intent and actions. Palace security immediately initiated lockdown procedures, temporarily halting all tourist activities while conducting a comprehensive sweep of the area. The changing of the guard ceremony was postponed as specialized units verified that Thompson had acted alone and posed no ongoing threat to royal security. The efficiency of this response demonstrated why Buckingham Palace had never suffered a successful security breach, despite being one of London's most visited attractions. Thompson's criminal background became immediately relevant as police ran his identification through their databases. His history of weapons-related offenses and recent prison release painted a picture of a repeat offender whose latest crime represented a significant escalation in both ambition and stupidity. The fact that he had targeted one of Britain's most secure locations while armed guards were present suggested either tremendous criminal arrogance or a complete disconnect from reality. The international media began arriving within hours of the incident, drawn by the combination of royal intrigue, dramatic tourist video footage, and the inherent absurdity of a criminal attempting to steal a rifle from the Queen's Guard in broad daylight. Thompson's failed crime had achieved something his successful burglaries never could: worldwide attention, though not the kind that would advance his criminal career. As Thompson sat in police custody, the magnitude of his miscalculation began to sink in. What had seemed like a clever plan to steal a valuable weapon and embarrass British security had instead resulted in multiple serious criminal charges, international humiliation, and the prospect of spending many more years in prison. His criminal career had reached its inevitable conclusion through his own arrogance and poor judgment. The legal consequences of Thompson's assault on royal security unfolded with the full weight of British justice bearing down on his reckless crime. Within hours of his arrest, he found himself facing multiple serious charges that carried the potential for decades in prison. The Crown Prosecution Service treated the incident with the utmost gravity, recognizing that any assault on royal security represented an attack on the British state itself. The charges against Thompson included attempted theft of a firearm, assault on a police officer, threatening behavior in a public place, and breach of the peace. More seriously, prosecutors also considered charges under anti-terrorism legislation, given that any attack on palace security could potentially be classified as an assault on critical national infrastructure. Each charge carried significant prison sentences, and the combination virtually guaranteed that Thompson would spend the remainder of his productive adult years behind bars. Guardsman Mitchell became the prosecution's star witness, his military bearing and professional conduct during the incident making him an ideal representative of the security forces Thompson had attacked. During police interviews, Mitchell described the assault with characteristic military precision, detailing Thompson's aggressive approach, his determined attempts to steal the rifle, and the potential dangers his actions had created for innocent tourists, particularly children who had been nearby during the struggle. The tourist video footage proved devastating to Thompson's defense strategy. Multiple camera angles captured every moment of his assault, from his initial approach through the final moments when he was overwhelmed by security personnel. Defense attorneys found it impossible to argue that their client had acted impulsively or without criminal intent, as the videos clearly showed his deliberate and sustained attempt to steal a military weapon from an armed guard. Thompson's criminal history became a central element of the prosecution's case, demonstrating a pattern of escalating criminal behavior that had culminated in this audacious assault on royal security. His previous convictions for weapons-related offenses showed that he understood the serious nature of firearm crimes, making it impossible for him to claim ignorance or diminished responsibility for his actions at Buckingham Palace. The international attention surrounding the case added pressure for swift and decisive justice. Media coverage from around the world portrayed Thompson as either a dangerous criminal or a foolish amateur who had embarrassed himself and his country through his reckless behavior. British authorities recognized that the world was watching how they handled this breach of royal security, and their response needed to demonstrate both the effectiveness of palace protection and the consequences of attacking British institutions. During his trial at the Old Bailey, Thompson's defense team attempted to portray him as a troubled individual, whose criminal behavior stemmed from mental health issues and social disadvantages. Character witnesses testified about his difficult childhood and struggles with addiction, painting a picture of a man whose criminal career represented a series of poor choices rather than inherent evil. However, the prosecution successfully argued that Thompson's careful planning and deliberate targeting of palace security demonstrated calculated criminal intent rather than impulsive behavior driven by mental illness. The victim impact statements revealed the broader consequences of Thompson's crime beyond the immediate assault on Guardsman Mitchell. Palace security personnel described the stress and additional training requirements resulting from his attack, while tourist industry representatives explained how security breaches affected London's reputation as a safe destination for international visitors. The ripple effects of his few minutes of criminal behavior extended far beyond what Thompson had considered during his prison planning sessions. Guardsman Mitchell's testimony proved particularly compelling during the trial proceedings. His calm recounting of the assault, combined with his obvious professionalism and dedication to duty, created a stark contrast with Thompson's criminal background and poor decision-making. The guard's military decorations and combat experience made him a sympathetic figure whose testimony carried considerable weight with the jury. The sentencing phase revealed the full extent of Thompson's miscalculation in targeting royal security. Judge Harrison, presiding over the case, emphasized that attacks on palace security struck at the heart of British democracy and constitutional monarchy. The sentence reflected not only Thompson's specific crimes, but also the need to deter others who might consider similar assaults on royal institutions. Thompson received 12 years in prison, effectively ending his criminal career and ensuring he would spend his remaining productive years behind bars. The psychological evaluation conducted during Thompson's imprisonment revealed a man struggling to comprehend the magnitude of his failure. Prison psychologists noted his difficulty accepting that his careful planning had been so fundamentally flawed, and his continued belief that he had been unlucky rather than stupid. This disconnect from reality suggested that Thompson had never truly understood the professional capabilities of the forces he had chosen to attack. The aftermath of Thompson's crime led to reviews of palace security procedures, though officials emphasized that existing protocols had proven effective in preventing any actual breach of royal protection. The incident served as a valuable training example for security personnel, demonstrating how quickly tourist areas could become crime scenes and how important it was to maintain constant vigilance, even during routine ceremonial duties. Guardsman Mitchell received commendation for his professional conduct during the assault, though he characteristically downplayed his role and emphasized that he had simply followed his training. His handling of the situation became a textbook example of how military personnel should respond to civilian attacks, maintaining both security and restraint while protecting innocent bystanders from harm. Thompson's crime ultimately achieved the opposite of everything he had hoped to accomplish. Instead of gaining criminal notoriety and a valuable weapon, he had earned international ridicule and a lengthy prison sentence. Instead of embarrassing British security, he had demonstrated its effectiveness and professionalism. His failed assault became a cautionary tale about the futility of attacking institutions backed by centuries of tradition and modern professional training. The final irony of Thompson's situation became apparent during his first years in prison, where he discovered that his notoriety worked against him rather than enhancing his criminal reputation. Fellow inmates viewed his assault on the Queen's Guard as both foolish and unpatriotic, making him a target for violence rather than respect. His grand criminal gesture had succeeded only in making him a pariah among the very people he had hoped to impress. As Thompson served his sentence, the world moved on from his moment of infamy, but the lessons of his failed crime continued to resonate. His assault on royal security had proven that no amount of criminal planning could overcome professional military training and institutional dedication to duty. The price he paid for his reckless ambition served as a permanent reminder that some targets are simply beyond the reach of criminal enterprise, regardless of the determination or desperation driving the attempt.